sisters, thank you very much for the warm welcome, and also welcome everybody here gathered for this family mass instituted because of the patronage of St. Anne, the patron saint of this church. The feast was, as we know, sometime during summer, but it's good to take her example, her character as an occasion to gather as a parish under her patronage. We call it a Family Sunday, and normally we think of the Holy Family as Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. But sometimes we also see another family scene depicted, namely Jesus, Mary, and St. Anne. So we also have St. Anne as the grandmother of Jesus, as another generation before the Holy Family. What we hear in today's Gospel is also a kind of family matter. A matter that could be raised in any family as we know it, but also in the big family of the Church. And to say it at once, it's a somewhat delicate matter. It could seem as a contradiction to what we have heard Jesus say in another part of the Gospels. There he says that you shouldn't say to your brother, let me take your splinter out of your eye, because you have a beam in your own eye. And of course we know what Jesus will tell us. We should not be too keen on correcting our brothers and sisters for small shortcomings when we have great failures in our own lives. How can Jesus say what he says today, that if our brother does something wrong, then we should correct him? If he doesn't want to listen to one of us, then we should take two witnesses and then tell him what is the matter in front of those two witnesses. If he doesn't listen to them, then he should be brought in front of the church. Of course, there's no contradiction between those two sayings of Jesus. Actually, the first one regarding the splinter and the beam, Jesus wants to warn us of being too busy in criticizing other people. We know that we can do that very easily. We get irritated at other people, then we tell them what we think about them. We can be very judgmental, so we will be very swift in saying what they are doing wrong. And in that case, the first one, the splinter and the beam, we are not doing it because we are concerned about those people, but just because they are irritating us, and we eventually want to promote ourselves, to tell them or other people how good we are. And Jesus wants us to be very careful, if not completely to avoid this sort of criticism. But there are also things about other people that need to be told. And we know from ourselves that when people are doing something wrong, or they are gliding away from the church, or on the way of coming into something bad, then we can be very reluctant in telling them. Because first of all we say, who am I to correct other people? I'm not too good myself, I have my own failures, so I want to mind my own business. And we don't want to make other people sorry by pointing out their failures. So sometimes in very important cases, we are very reluctant in correcting other people. But sometimes we should really take courage to say what other people are doing wrong. Not to criticize them, not to tell that we are better than they are, not to judge them, but to help them. And one good sign of when we are to do what is this when we would be very keen on criticizing other people, when we are trembling to tell what we think about them, to make fools of them, then we should be very careful, or even avoid saying what we think about them. That means to avoid unnecessary and uncharitable criticism. But if we find it difficult to tell what we really think should be said, then it can be a sign that we should overcome our resistance and tell them. It can be very hard, it can be very painful, but sometimes it is also necessary. And this is not being judgmental, it's being showing, means to show concern for our brothers and sisters. And that's part of the job of the church, of the family of the church. We are here to help each other. We are here to be good examples for one another. And if something is going wrong, then we should not judge the other people and say, we don't want to have you among us anymore, please go away, you are not worthy of coming to the church, you are not worthy of being part of our community. No, if we think that they are doing something wrong, which we often sometimes do, then we should take courage and out of love and care for them, go and tell them, please stop what you are up to. It's not good for you, it's not good for your family, it's not good for your church, for the church. So please come back, please turn around and be reconciled with God and with other people. Satan can be painful, but it's also very healing. And if this takes place in an atmosphere where you are concerned about your faith, where you take your faith for granted, want to live it authentically, then we should not be afraid of correcting each other. This phenomenon that Jesus is talking about in today's gospel is in spiritual life called correctio fraterna, that means brotherly correction. That means if we tell people about their failures because we love them, then it's something we do because they are our brothers and sisters. And it's good for everybody. Also, we priests, bishops, have to be corrected sometimes when we are not doing our job properly or living authentic Christian lives. So we should, in the same way as we should be ready to tell other people that they are wrong when we do it out of love, then every one of us should be able to listen to the brotherly criticism of other people. This will help us grow in authentic Christian life, because if we don't tell other people what they are doing wrong, then their situation will be worse, and eventually they will end up in a disaster. It also goes for the mission of the church. The first reading tells about that the prophet is supposed to be a sentinel going to be a watchman for the house of Israel. So also the church is supposed to be a watchman for people of the world. Many people will think that this is very preposterous. Who is the church to tell us what we should do? But the church has a mission to tell what is right and what is wrong, to tell what is true and what is false. And sometimes as a church we are also very reluctant in speaking up when injustices are occurring or when people are moving away from truth, because we say, oh, that's the tendency of the time, we have to adapt and adjust to new situations, so we shouldn't as a church be too judgmental, too categorical about the gospel. But this is not the right way. Also as a church we should have the courage to speak up. And we know, especially we bishops know, because we are very often the first ones to be asked, know that it's not always very easy. But we should try to overcome this reluctance and speak up, because it may seem very complacent, very humane to adjust to the situation, to be very understanding to the situation of people of today, to admit that we cannot use the same method as we did once. But for some very important parts of the gospel, this is not the right way, because what Jesus is telling us is valid for all times. The Ten Commandments are valid for all times, for all people. The truth that Christ through His church is proclaiming is valid for all times. So the message itself should be proclaimed in its fullness, unabbreviated. But of course, we should adapt the methods. And also as a church, we should speak with love and charity, knowing that some people have very big problems, are in a very difficult situation. Even in spite of trying hard, they are not able or not succeeding in doing what they perhaps really would want to do. And for that, the church should have understanding and patience, but not by saying that, no, perhaps you are not doing what is right, and that's okay, God will forgive you and do as you want. So let us try to adapt to this message of today's gospel, that as individuals, as a smaller community, we try to listen to each other, accept fraternal correction, and take the courage to help other people in changing their lives. So also as a church, we can stand in front of the world as an authentic community. In spite of the failures that has been happening in the church, then we will still be trustworthy, and we will still be credible when we try to do what is right. And then people will also listen to us, not only because we are telling the truth and living ourselves, but because they will experience that this truth is needed. Not the cause of the world, not the tendency of modern times is what is going to save mankind, but the message of Christ, which we as a church, as parish community, should be living and proclaiming. So let us ask Christ to help us in achieving